What's up, guys? Welcome back to the MSR Workshop. So I have a very special unboxing to do today and a new rifle scope to talk to you about. I think you will really like this one, and I'm not just saying that this time. I think you'll enjoy this, so stick around. So the unboxing and review we are going to be doing today is on the March Majesta 8-80 second focal plane rifle scope. So this was something that I had wanted for a very long time. It is not something that was sent to me. This was something that I purchased with my own money. So let's open this up and talk about this very special and very unique rifle scope. So the March Majesta 8-80 is a second focal plane rifle scope, and it was designed for extreme long range shooting. The Majesta is built in Japan, and these rifle scopes are handmade. There's not a lot of them around. Currently, you get an allotment for an order that they'll make so many, and when they finish that one, they'll send it. So I had one of these on back order for, I guess, about 2 months. Now, I was able to find one that somebody had in stock and was able to order it, so I was able to get mine. Now, because of the tariffs and the shutdown of some of the trading, these were actually put on hold, and then they restarted up their factory, so there's not a lot of these available right now. This particular rifle scope is an 8-80. Yes, you heard that right. This is an 80 powered rifle scope. This currently is the highest magnification rifle scope on the market today. You cannot get anything higher than that. Now, they offer this in a number of different reticle configurations, one specifically for F Class shooting, one's for field target for people that do air guns, all of that. And I am an air gunner over an F Class shooter, and air gunners, why would you need such a high magnification scope like this? Well, if you're shooting in, say, 100-yard bench rest, you are using a very tiny little pellet, and it's nice to be able to see all of those rings, see exactly where your pellets are going. So high magnification scopes are a favorite of airgun shooters. Now, the current reticle that I got on this scope is the MTR-W1. So it's a crosshairs with hash marks, and it has a floating dot in the center. It has an illuminated reticle, and I will show you that once we get this hooked up to the scope camera. It is 1/8 MOA clicks. Now, they do make a mil dot version, slightly different, but there is a number of different ones to choose from. So there is kind of a flavor for everybody. All right, let's go over this scope spec sheet here. So the power is an 8x to 80x. Your objective diameter is 56 millimeters, tube length 34. Your pupil exit diameter is 4.1. Total length is 420 millimeters. You have a weight of 1,175 grams. Of course, I said it's a 1/8 MOA adjustments. You have 66 MOA of elevation, 36 MOA of windage. Your eye relief, which is actually a quite nice eye relief, is 76 to 92 millimeters. Side parallax focus, and your minimum focusing distance is 10 yards to infinity. So this number right here was very important to me because I need to be able to use this close range as well as long range. And anything above really 10 yards for me is not usable because you will not be able to use that full focal range. So say if I was shooting bench rest at a close indoor range, say at 20 yards, if I was anything above that 10-yard range, I wouldn't be able to use most of my zoom range. Color, this is a special gray color. They only make one color, and my reticle is the MTR-W1. So here is the March Majesta 8-80 scope in all of its glory. The very unique Shuriken locking turrets. Red is locked, little twist back, white is unlocked. Same with this here. And then really cool, this is your on-off button for your illumination. Now, some people think that it looks like it's a cap missing. It's not. And the reason they did this is because a lot of times you're twisting to turn your illumination on and off and all the other rifle scopes out there. Well, the problem with that is if you're twisting, a lot of times you'll end up twisting your parallax adjustment as well, throwing your focus off. This way you can set your illumination where you want it, and it's just a button tap on and off. So that is really, really unique for this scope. So let's take a listen to the clicks. Very nice sounding. Now on the front diopter you have a locking ring, which is buttery smooth, by the way. And then you have your eyepiece focus. And then once you get that set, you're able to just lock that down. Your zoom range. And it does come with a throw lever. Parallax adjustment, and it does come with the adapter wheel, so you can mount a large parallax throw lever wheel if you want on there. But this is just so smooth. So let's set this right up here. Next, what comes in here is you have pop-up front and rear lens shades, as well as a sunshade. Now, some people have complained that the sunshade, they wish it was the same silver color as the barrel. I don't mind the black because it is kind of a black and silver kind of look to it. Now, I heard rumors that March was offering or is going to be making a silver sunshade for those that want to match, which is cool as well, and I may pick one of those up. We'll see. Also in here, you have your bag of goodies, and let's see what comes in here. You have a 39mm ring that mounts on your parallax adjustment here, and then this would mount any larger parallax adjustment wheels. This is actually a stop to stop the front objective down, and I'm not sure exactly how it works. It's called a modifier disc, but it cuts down on a little bit of the light, but it helps with depth of field and focusing at long distance, or so I'm told. And your throw lever. Now, the other two reviews that I've seen on this scope, and there's not many, people have complained initially that they don't like this plastic throw lever. Well, I've been told once it's mounted, it is extremely secure, and the reason for this being plastic, it is meant to be a breakaway. So if you're ever to bump this against something, if an aluminum was screwed on there, you could risk damaging your scope, and I would so much rather worry about damaging this and just getting a new one than I would, just because of aesthetic reasons, get an aluminum focus lever. So that's a nice trade-off. I would rather this than, ever risk damaging the scope. And then last but not least, you'd have your little adjustment tool for setting any zero stops. And it's got a little key ring on it, which is cool. You can stick that on, your keys and just have you with you at all times. So one of the things that I am absolutely most excited about, other than the scope itself, is something that isn't really talked about and is very unique, I believe, to this scope. Well, what is unique is, and maybe not to this scope particularly, but your front is threaded. Now, the front is threaded obviously to put on a sunshade, and I will talk about that. But on this scope, this is threaded on this side as well. Well, what does that mean for the user? what that means is there is options to buy screw-on threaded aluminum lens caps. These are not made by March. They are actually meant for digital cameras. And the cool thing about March being that it's made in Japan, and Japan is one of the premier places where most high-end camera equipment is made. So that means Canon, that means Nikon. A lot of glass manufacturing is probably the world's premier glass manufacturer. Well, what March has done is they've added threads on the both sides that are actually compatible with standard threads on camera equipment. So you can buy front and rear screw-on scope covers if you so choose. But I took that one step farther and I got camera UV filters that will thread onto the front and then will utilize clip-on caps. So let me screw these on and show you guys how these work. And why would you want to use this? Well, I used to be heavily into photography. I had some high-end Canon. I had a bunch of their white lenses, and if any of you have looked at a sporting event and seen all those white giant lenses along the sidelines at sporting events, those are Canon lenses. They are high-dollar lenses, and they do everything they can to protect their glass. And the first thing most camera people do is buy a screw-on UV filter, and that will protect your front and your rear element. Well, the cool thing about this is it's very low profile. It screws right in, and I will make sure to leave links where I got all these, but any size filter. So this here filter on the end of this is an 58 millimeter UV filter. Now, if you just want to leave it at this, you can do that, and you can use the standard caps that came with it. You also could use the flip-up caps that came with it. If you don't want to use that, you can use these pinch-style lens caps that clip right on, and now quick, easy to take off. Same with this side as well. You can put on a threaded lens filter, and this is a 43 millimeter UV filter that will clip right on, and now you have a front clip-on cap. Now, if you're worried that putting two more elements on either side of the lens is going to drop down your light, I have not noticed any light change. Now, if you are concerned at high magnification and that's where you need the maximum amount of light, it's easy enough just to screw them off. That is very exciting to me, because when you buy a high-dollar lens like this, you're able to put on protective covers on both ends, so you don't have to worry about dust, you don't have to worry about moisture, anything getting on those elements, and they are going to stay pristine. Heaven forbid if you're able to, drop this or nick the lens or it gets scratched up, all you do is unscrew this and throw on a new one. And these are a dime a dozen on Amazon. Obviously, you want to get high quality ones, so you aren't putting just cheap glass in front of your high-dollar glass inside the scope. But a good high-quality UV filter should have zero effect on the light transmission within the scope, and you are guaranteed protection of your front and rear optical elements. So that is very, very cool. And I am glad March Scopes did that. And I don't know of any other company that does that. I do think it's either Leopold or Leica. They do make filters, and you can put on, say, a yellow filter to increase contrast with long-range shooting. but I think they're very expensive, and I think they're exclusive to just their rifle scope. With March, because you have the same threads as a standard camera filter, you have the full array of any type of filter that you can imagine, so long as it's the same diameter, could thread on to the scope. And some people have even, on cameras I know, can't find the right filter, they'll just get a step up ring and a step down ring, and you can get adapters, and there's tons of cool camera equipment and ideas that you could play with for filters on this. So next, we are going to get this mounted up to the gun, and we're going to do a little shooting through it and see how clear it is, see how crisp the image is, see if we lose any light transmission, any color degradation, any of that. Now, I want you guys to remember that the image quality coming through the camera is not going to be what your naked eye sees. Your eye is going to be much, much better. So if you do see any haziness, you do see any fuzziness on the other end, that is most likely or probably guaranteed my camera and not any issues with the scope. So take that in mind when we get out there. I'm not going to do any color and tracking charts per se, just because on Moondog's 2A, that's the name of the channel, Moondog 2A, he did a fantastic review of this scope where he does tracking, he does exposure shots with this, and he has a better camera setup than I do. So it's a better representation of how beautiful the glass is on correct settings. So that being said, let me stop talking, let me get this mounted up, and we'll get outside. All right, guys, so here's our first views through the March Majesta 8-80 scope, and it is just stunning. It really doesn't do it justice through this scope camera. I'm using the Scopemate S28 4K. Sometimes it's a little finicky focusing, but for some reason it just clicked this day and it just looks amazing. I'm just panning around here trying to get a good shot, but just the brilliance of these trees and how much light it lets in doesn't really do it justice in how beautiful this is. Sometimes it's bright enough that the camera tends to stop the exposure down a bit, so it does look a little bit darker, but what I'm seeing through my eyes is even more crisp and clear than what you guys are seeing. Turn the illumination on just so you can see it. This is me zooming in all the way, and the reason it looks a little bit out of focus is actually the camera and not the scope itself. As I zoom in, the Scopemate tends to go out of focus just a little bit. Now I will focus here just a little bit, and you can see it does drop down the exposure just a little bit, but my eye is seeing this, and it is very nice and crystal clear and bright. Backing all the way out here again. And this is all the way out to that 8 power. Just beautiful. And this is my little 20-yard target. And we'll get this focused on this target. And you can see just how nice it looks, even at close range. And that's a hard thing for scopes to do. With this much magnification and to be able to focus this close, it is really an accomplishment. So here in a second we'll get back to that shooting target, but let's look at our color chart. This is 35 yards away, and we are starting off with our 8x magnification. Now I made the mistake of laminating this, and so it does get a little bit glary and make it harder for you to see, but it's actually a lot clearer if it's not laminated. So zooming into 10x, and I'm going to be zooming in on the white writing on the outside of the scope, not using the hash marks. So we'll just scope in the increments that's marked on the outside of the zoom lever. But really clear here, still getting really good color. Next we jump up to 15x, and you can of course see that lamination gets a little bit, you know, makes it hard for you to read the letters, but it still looks really good. Here is 20x. And it was a cloudy and overcast day. Actually, it was raining just a little bit, so I was shooting this out of a window with no screen in it so I wouldn't get wet. but you can still see it still is really nice and bright with really good color on it. And this thing looks even better looking at it through the naked eye than what you guys are seeing because I was shooting through a camera. Now here I'm using my digital zoom built in on the camera just to check focus, and that's why I zoom in all the way occasionally. We are now at 30x. Sorry for the shakiness here. And you can still see all of the color. Zooming in here with the digital zoom again, and then I use my parallax to make sure everything is in perfect focus, because what it looks through my eye and what the camera picks up are different. Now moving into 40x. And we are at 60x now. And then our next increment will be our full 80x magnification. And turning on the illumination here, you can see what part of the reticle is illuminated. And this is the brightest illumination on this scope. Not crazy bright, but you can see we zoom way back out here, all the way back out to that 8 power, and just how bright it gets. Next, let's move into a target that's a bit farther away. This is a radio tower, I'm assuming, about 560 yards away. And starting off with our 8x magnification, this is still, once again, a quite cloudy, overcast day, and we're still getting a really good picture. So starting to zoom way in here, and I didn't record the zoom settings on this, but I'm guessing this is about 30 or 40 power. But you can see really good detail at this distance. Trying to keep that white dish in the center. Here I'm checking it with my digital zoom just to make sure that it's as focused as possible for this recording. And then I will start to slowly zoom back in. I believe this here was 60. And then we'll get to 80 here in just a second. But very, very clear. Lots of detail. So much detail. And I'll point it out in another picture here in just a second. Here is at our 80x. And checking it with our digital zoom one last time. But really, really enjoy looking through this, and especially shooting with this. Now it does look a little bit hazier than some other lower powered scopes at a close distance, because this even March states that the 60 power is a little bit better for closer distance shooting than the 80 power. But I went ahead and went with the 80 power anyways, and I am not disappointed in the least little bit. So I want to jump next here to a couple pictures that I took with the previous scope that I reviewed. And while initially these two pictures, one looks significantly brighter than the other, I want you to notice the detail on that round disc. And I didn't notice it at first until I looked at this afterwards. But all of that edge detail you lose with that first picture to the right, or excuse me, that first picture to the left. You have so much more detail that you are missing out on. in that left picture. Now the picture does look brighter. I'm not sure what made it look brighter, whether it was just the way the sun was at that very moment, because I shot them both on the same day and at the same time. And initially when I looked at them, I'm like, wow, this first scope looks a lot brighter than the other one, and I, paid so much more for the other one. But then going back and looking at the actual details that the first scope is missing out on, that dish, it's actually not perfectly flat. Well, the first scope makes it look flat. The second one, you actually see that the shape of that disc, the details on the edge, the shadows, the subtle details that you really miss out with that first one. While both of them have a great picture, no complaints with that first one at all. Can you make a shot with that first one? Absolutely. But if you just want the highest details possible, the March Majesta is really where you are going to get that extra little bit. Alright, and last but not least, let's do a little shooting here. So this is my precision airgun target that I use it at about 19 yards. And so the first square, I put about 10 shots through it, about the same hole. You guys can see how great this looks on camera. Could be better just because the naked eye is always going to be better than your scope camera. But I really, really enjoy shooting with this optic. And I wouldn't hesitate buying one again. Alright guys, let's take some final thoughts on the March Majesta 8-80 second focal plane scope. I think this thing is fantastic. The glass quality is, bar none, probably one of the best, if not the best you can get. And I know this is the only 80 power scope out there, so it's really hard to compare what it would be with another 80 powered scope. But March did a fantastic job on this, and I don't have any complaints. Now, the only critique or criticism to March for this scope, or probably all of their scopes, is the lens caps that they throw in there. I just reviewed a scope for thousands of dollars less that came with threaded front and metal lens caps, and they worked fantastic. It made the whole experience of using that scope so much better. And some of what you get when you buy a premium scope like this, yes, you want the optimum glass quality, but it's also a user experience. And having cheap scope caps on a premium product like this is almost an insult to the manufacturers, because they put so much time and work and money in developing this glass and this type of optic that to throw plastic lens caps in the box is almost an insult. I would really love to see you guys develop some threaded metal flip-up lens caps for these. Even if they're an option and not included, I would pay the money for those. But really, that is the only complaint or critique that I have for March. Hopefully you guys watch this and take note for future rifle options. But that being said, I would really love to hear from you guys and what your experience has been, if you've ever dealt with March scopes before or have used any of their products. But if you want to know more about this one here and the March 8-80, I will leave a link in the description below. You guys have any comments, questions, or suggestions, leave those below. And as always, I would love for you guys to hit that like and subscribe button, because every little bit does help this channel out. Until next time, guys, thanks again.